right, you're still watching The Wake of Nigeria, and on Book Chat today we're reviewing The Rise of a Queen by Josephine Ogufere. She's an educational consultant with over 17 years of experience and a deep passion for empowering women to rise from obscurity and embrace their full potential. And right now, it's Queen Arise. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
I love your book.
Thank you.
The title is quite interesting. It says, Queen Arise, take your position on your throne in your palace. Tell us about that.
Oh, okay. So it all started when I started to go through life. You know, at some point you go through life when there's no daddy, there's a mommy, but then you just have to be on your toes because she has raised you well, you know. And then the realities of life dawned on me, and I started to fall into depression. I became a shadow of myself. So that once energetic, vibrant girl, all of a sudden started to go down, you know. And so it made me become a shadow of myself. I wasn't confident anymore. And then I was in this valley. It was a very dark place to be. But at some point, thank God for the help of the Holy Spirit, I was actually able to come to terms with my reality. So while I was still down and out, the Holy Spirit kept telling me, you need to arise. You need to pick up the pieces of your life. Stop the pity party. And you know, the reason why you've even been through what you've been through, it's because you're going through fire. And the effect of fire is gold.
Yeah.
When you're done, exactly, when you're done with refinement, what happens is that you take your place as a queen. So that once depressed, sad, broke, busted and disgusted girl arose and became the queen that she is today.
That is
so that's
beautiful.
what it is.
That is beautiful. And I love the fact that you touched on the Holy Spirit, because when I read the book, there was something that really stood out for me. Is the fact that the women here are women from the Bible.
Yes.
So we're talking about Esther, we're talking about Bathsheba, we're talking about, you know, all of these women. Why did you decide that, you know what, this is the case study I want to use for my book? Okay. Not just maybe women that we know here in Nigeria.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I decided, I've always been a Bible person. You know, my parents showed me Jesus. Aww. And at some point I was like, this Jesus. And then I encountered him for myself personally. So it wasn't a case of, oh, daddy told me give your life to Christ. It was now I had a personal relationship. Now, I chose the very bad girls of the Bible. Very bad girls, because somehow I saw myself as a not very good girl. So there was Tamar, prostitute, sleeping with her father-in-law. And at some point, she becomes in the genealogy of Jesus. She's a bad girl, but she became, you know, part of the ancestors, you know. Then Esther was not a bad girl, but she was very, very, very withdrawn. So at some point, she had to come to limelight. She had to forget the fact that she didn't have parents. She was very poor. And then she just came there. She had to take responsibility. Of course, there was Rahab.
She had wisdom. She knew how to
exactly.
Yeah.
So there was Rahab, the baddest of them all. But she was the one that allowed the spies come, and then she gave them a place. And that was really awesome. So sometimes we look at all these very bad people like us, and then at some point we're like, this one, what can you amount to? But God is saying, these bad girls are my girls.
Yeah.
Because what I will do for them is to take them through a process of transformation. And by the time they're done with transformation, they come out as that beautiful butterfly. Yeah. And then they can, you know, do mighty and great things. So we all come from the place of being a not too good girl. Maybe poor, maybe sad, maybe depressed, maybe immoral. But God brings us to that point. We have a common ground where he's not judging us. He's just bringing us to that point, taking us for who we are. And then he just beautifies us and makes us rise as the queen that we become. And so everybody wants to identify with us, but they don't know the story.
The story. Oh my God, you are an evangelist, because you just speaking, I can tell that you have a ministry, and, you know, putting all of this into perspective, I'm just like, it's true, right? There is no way you would come out and people cannot relate to you. So sometimes you have to go through this thing so that someone else can see themselves in you and say, you know what, this person went through it and was this, I can go through that as well. And no matter who I am, God still loves me. I'm not being judged. And that is so beautiful. But there's something else. It was Bathsheba's beauty, Mary's moment. You know, why did you have to phrase words like that?
Okay, so it was also the reflection of the Holy Spirit. But Bathsheba's beauty, I phrased it because Bathsheba was very beautiful. but she didn't know she was beautiful. You know how that you just continue through life and you don't even know that you're beautiful. And all of a sudden, to show her beauty spoke for her even before she arrived in the presence of the king. The king compromised the standard because of a fine girl. You know, a lot of kings compromise their standard because of fine girls. Now, the reason why a fine girl will not know she's a fine girl and also put herself down is because she's not aware that she's a fine girl. So I'm a fine girl, so I should play a little bit of hard to get, you know. And then Bathsheba's beauty. So I wanted an image, I wanted an avatar of a beautiful woman that doesn't know she's beautiful. But at the end of the day, she comes to terms with reality. Because what did she do next? The first time David said come, and then he harassed her. The second time, she went into the presence of the king with so much confidence. And she was like, this is my son. You remember you promised that he was going to be the king. So make him king. And you know, it was just amazing how she transformed from that girl that was taken advantage of to a girl that stood her ground and said, you know what, I want this to happen. And then it happened. So there was Tamara's triumph. She had suffered a lot. And then they had promised to give her a second husband. And then they said, oh, go home. And all of a sudden, okay, your husband dies. And then they tell you to go home because there is a second husband. The second husband comes and then you say again, go home. And at some point, there's a third person. And then the next thing you're saying, go. And she's like, okay, God, I leave everything in your hands. See how beautiful God can be. Even though she had lost two husbands, what happened? She gave birth to twins to make up for all the times where she lost, you know. And then, of course, there was Tamara's triumph, Bathsheba's beauty. There was Esther's encounter. Esther encountered, you know, the Lord. She said, if I perish, I perish. But then I'll go into the king. And the king granted her the request. He said, half of my kingdom. Imagine a guy giving you half of his kingdom. You know,
you're rich. You're rich.
Exactly.
And you know, just talking about God's love, God's beauty. I love your introduction. It says, isn't it just beautiful to experience God's love at the point where we get to the end of ourselves, where we just can't take it anymore? And that's how God shows up for us. So with this book, what's the message you're trying to give to the people? Because I mean, you've used these women from the Bible, but it's something that people in this world can relate with. What is that message?
Okay, so if you notice, I use people of the Bible because I wanted everybody to see that the people in the past still live our lives. There's still the very, 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 there's all sorts. There's the broke, busted, disgusted girl. But then there's me living in this age, and at some point I'm broke and I can't even afford, you know, necessities. But I'm saying, God is saying, you can actually afford your necessities if you just put yourself on your throne. You just need to get into your palace. We all have our palaces. You don't need to necessarily have one place. But in your mind, it starts with the mind. When you see yourself as a queen, then it works. So people in the olden days saw themselves as queens. So it's still the same story. We relate with them also in the present times. So it's something not only for people in the past. The past is just a reference. But this is our reality. This is even our future. Because what we do now determines what happens. So it is very, very relatable to all of us living at this time and in this season.
Beautiful. And I think it's time for queens to arise. They need to take their throne, you know, take the position in their palace and know who you are. Be confident. Say, yes, I can do it. I can get it. I can, anything that I want, as long as my Father will give it to me, it's for my taking. And we want to say thank you so much for coming. It's a beautiful book. I wish you all the best, and I cannot wait to read what you write next.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. You're welcome.
All right, we're going on a short break, but there's still so much more on Wake Up Nigeria. See you after this.